Our next speaker is Péter Vidos. He's a digital product developer, and he's developed products from mobile beta testing, ad targeting, data visualization for decision support, to building a selfie teleport just for fun. And the title of his talk is Use Animated Data Stories to present and share your findings with ipyvizzu-story. To tell us more, please welcome to the stage Péter Vidos.
Thank you. Hey everyone. Thank you for having me. I would like to express my gratitude for Crunch organizers to invite me again. I had the chance to present at Crunch last year, which effectively meant that I was standing in an empty meeting room talking to my laptop. So this is obviously a lot different, and I'm glad to be here. I would like to start with some questions now that I have the opportunity to interact with you. So how many of you work as data scientists and data analysts every day? Hands up, please. Okay, roughly like half of the room. How many of you have to present your findings to business stakeholders regularly? Looks like almost everyone who's hold their hand up high for the previous question. A fake naive one. How many of you use charts in these presentations? Okay, obviously everyone. How many of you use animated charts for such presentations? There's like 2 people. Why? Why is that? It's an open question. Why don't you use animated charts? Oh, come on, just shout in some answers that come to your mind. Come again?
Tricky,
complex and tricky. What was yours? It's lame. Thanks. Love the positive attitude. I'm glad to be here. Anyhow, most people tell me that, yeah, they are complex, they are hard to build, it takes a lot of effort, and some that it's lame. But I hope I can prove them wrong. So anyhow, I'm representing an early stage startup here called VIZZU. We're based here in Budapest, Hungary, and we are all into animated charts. And the whole thing started, for me at least, when I met with an old friend and a former colleague of mine, and he showed me something like this, that how he envisioned the future of people interacting with data. So like a visual interface where you just drag and drop data series on top of each other, and then it morphs. You can just take a look at your data, find the insights, and use it on top of a dashboard or share it, and things like that. It was a very compelling vision. Also a bit of frightening in terms of like, okay, if we do want to realize it, what's the effort? And there's a lot, I can tell you that. So, you know, today it looks like this. Charts are only at the very end of the working with data. I mean, you know that better than I do. I mean, maybe you use some of them during analysis, but when you really want to make a nice looking chart, that only comes towards the end of the process when you want to share your insights. And things like Andrew Abela's chart suggestion really sums it up well, that you first have to know what you would want to show, and then it suggests some chart types in doing so. And if you pick the wrong one, then you know you have to go back and play with the settings and things like that. It's a completely different world that we're living in right now. And so in order to change all this, Andrew, this friend and now co-founder of mine, realized that we need to build a single engine that can generate all the different types of charts. And because of this single logic that it employs, it would be able to morph between the charts that are expressed on its interface. So we started a lengthy research into different chart types, how they encode data, what are the characteristics, how many data series they can actually encode. He, you know, just gathered it up in a really big spreadsheet. He also made a ton of research into how to animate between chart forms, because actually it's not trivial at all. There's a separate grammar we're actually researching, a grammar of animation, how to tell a story and not like this, so you know, interrupt and totally puzzle the viewer. So just to give you a simple example, this is how you should properly show and hide elements on a tree map, and you can do it wrong in many ways. Like this is one of them. You won't be able to follow along what's going on. So another co-founder, Simon, joined, and together, in a joint effort, we managed to create something really unique. This engine that generates all these charts and can animate between them. And that's like the core of what we're all doing. And what we do basically is we build layers of service around it. And that's, you saw the vision. So basically, at one day, we want to get to the point where everybody using Excel or Google Sheets would be able to just, drag and drop things and play on a graphical user interface. We're on our way. And the reason I'm here, not being a data scientist at all, not being a coder at all, is because currently our tool is ready for you to use. And I would want those of you who don't find animated charts lame and are interested in a little bit of using such a technology to give it a go and just shine on meetings where you present your insights. So some of the basic benefits of using animated charts is that it connects the views of the same data set. So like these 4 charts show the same data, but you don't necessarily know the connection between them. Whereas if I just connect these views using animation, everything becomes very obvious. You're basically using a different part of your brain, and it comes very natural to you to follow along these changes when the data is shown. But this is just like a tiny piece of the benefits that animation brings to the mix. It's really, we like to think that is similar to how pictures and movies relate. So there's a whole lot of new dimensions being added here. Time, obviously, you can show change over time. You can naturally show the elements of a complex chart, and you can actually turn just a single chart to a story by showing different elements of it, while the audience can just really naturally follow along the story. That's the basic concept behind all this. So first, what we did with the early prototype, we published some stories on Reddit. And I'm just going to show you a couple of those as an example. This is one that shows how much a cocoa bean farmer gets from a $1 chocolate bar. And it's a super, super simple visualization. You could show this data with like 20 different charts. But the animation creates a narrative here and builds tension and turns the whole thing into a story where we're like expecting, like, when will the poor farmer come? And also gives us an overview at the end. It's really simple, super easy to follow, and was only banned after like 40,000 upvotes because of the ad that's in it. And Reddit have an issue with promoting stuff. Here's another one just to show you a completely different example that shows how much radiation those guys on the Chernobyl roof had to endure who were sent out to clear the radioactive debris. It shows it in real time, and by the different other categories appearing, just puts it into context. It's easy as that. So those are actually very simple things, but it brought us 40+ million views and over 200,000 upvotes on Reddit. So I can tell you, most people like animated data stories, or at least that's the impression we got. And we also built some interactives, like this one about Donald Trump's tweets. You can see Trump's tweets per month. As you can see, in the early period, he almost didn't use the platform, and then he had these waves of use. This was when he was using the web interface, then his favorite Android phone, and then an iPhone. He was elected president sometime around here, so right before the election, I guess his phone was taken away from him to ensure that he doesn't say too many things. My favorite insight, number of tweets versus the number of retweets. So you can say no one really cared about the guy before he was a serious candidate and then a president. And basically, with the use of animation, end users can use such an interactive dashboard or report to look at the data from different angles, just split it up to see the components, trends side by side, see the total number. Here we even created a 24-hour clock that shows when these tweets were sent, and you can filter it down to different periods, like when he was a businessman, and the peak is around 3 p.m., and he had these famous tweet trends during the night, so like over 70 tweets sent between 3 and 3:15 a.m. And then when he became president, the peak went over to the early morning hours, and the tweet trends were gone. So these are just a couple of examples we used our tool for, but obviously as a startup, we wanted to find our first problem that we can put our technology to good use to help solving. And we figured that there's a problem of data scientists that has some unmet needs. I'm not going to read out what's on the slide, but basically it says that data scientists spend a lot of time with reporting and presentation. It's important for the companies that employ these data scientists and management. So the people they are showing this to have some issues figuring out what's going on and understanding those insights. And yeah, we were looking for ways to understand what kind of tools data scientists use for storytelling and presentation. And we felt that there's an opportunity here, to say the least. So basically, the way we built our technology, our core engine is in C++. That's what we use to build the stories and the interactives that you saw before. We released last September, around a year ago, a JavaScript charting library, open source, for JS developers. It's already been embedded into live products and things. And then this spring was when ipyvizzu was born. It's the implementation of the JavaScript library into the IPython, so the Jupyter environment. You can use it in Jupyter Notebook and similar notebooks like Databricks and Kaggle and Google Colab and DeepNote. And then this July, so a little over 3 months ago, we released a new extension that enables you to put these charts into an interactive presentation right within your notebook and then just go and present it in a boardroom or in a meeting room. I'm going to show you how it works so in a second. And we felt that all the products are open source. So you can find them on GitHub, you can play with them. They are all under the Apache 2.0 license. You can build anything you want, commercial products, whatever. And we felt, and our experience is that this kind of openness and embeddability is really good for availability. So we had contributions from the community enabling us for ipyvizzu to be available in all of these platforms. And we are in close contact with the PyScript guys and with the DeepNote people talking about different collaboration options. And it was great to see this sort of welcoming atmosphere that got to us due to being open and open source. So without further ado, let's get down to coding, shall we? I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how ipyvizzu works and what you can use it for. It has a very simple logic. There's just one method, the animate method, and you add args and quarks to it. There are like these 3 parameters. You have to add the data, you have to add the configuration of the chart, and you have to set the style. And you also have the option to tweak the animation a bit. We really focus on making it like all the animations great right from the start, but you're free to hack the hell out of it and tell us we're wrong or prove us wrong. How we set it up, and you just when you want to. So first you call it, and then you have a chart. Then you call the animate method once again, and the chart will morph to the second configuration. Easy as that. And as I said, we have a generic chart creation engine. So you just set the settings for each chart, and our technology will do the rest. So let's see our first example here. It's about a LinkedIn survey, a LinkedIn poll that I did a couple of weeks back. I asked people in 5 different groups of data scientists how often they have to present their findings to business stakeholders. And ipyvizzu works together with pandas, so you basically just, as you can see, I add a CSV and I add it to the data frame, and then I start working with it. I create the chart, I set the width and the height, and I add the data as a first step. And then I call the animate method that I told you. So first I'm going to filter the data to show only one of the groups that this question was asked in. I add the vote percentage and the answer on the x-axis, the group on the y-axis, even though only one will appear at this point. I will color the different answers based on, differently. And I also add the label, the vote percentage on the marker, and I set the title of the chart. And as you can see, I also set the style, the padding of the legend a little bit different. So I'm just going to run this cell, and our first chart appears. And it just does what it says. We have all the series over there. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So as you can see, we have the labels on the markers, and we have a color legend and everything. So next up, I'm just going to switch off the filter, meaning that all the other groups appear. So if I run this cell, then the data from the 4 additional groups appear. And These charts, I mean, people tend to like it. They are not very easy to read when they're static. But with a little bit of animation, you can make insights within these charts very straightforward and easy to understand. So let's just split the chart and see the answers side by side. So as you can see, 2 or more per month, so for the presentations that data scientists do, was the most popular option. But there's like big differences between groups. So an interesting thing would be to add the vote count, to switch from the answer percentage to the vote count, which I do in the next step. I'm just going to add vote count to the x-axis, keep the answer there, and add it also to the label. And if I run this cell, you can see the size of the markers change, but it's still pretty easy to follow. And as you can see, over 60% of the votes came from one group. So that's obviously like tells us a lot. If this was a little like a scientific experiment, people would have doubts about why it's so one-sided and thing. Next up, I'm just going to add the number of votes per answer, so accumulate those. In order to do that, I would put the answer, it's still on the x-axis, but I would put the vote count on the y-axis, as you can see, and switch off the splitting. And I also add an additional step where I take off the group from the y-axis because it's not needed anymore. And as you can see, it really nicely does it, and we can see the number of votes per answer in a very natural and easy to understand fashion. And the only 2 steps left is to switch to the total percentage to see how everybody voted in percentage-wise, and then just by switching the coordinate system to polar, turning this into a pie chart that makes it really obvious that over 2/3 of data scientists who filled this survey have to present at least once per month, which is great. I mean, we're happy about it, obviously. So there's this need, it validates it. The issues with this was released in March. This is how it looked back then. The issues or the feedback we got from data scientists, they had 2 of those. First, this generic logic of just putting series on axes and channels, it's hard for them to comprehend. They are more used to actually the Andrea Bela type of thing, so that they have a chart type in mind, and then they want to visualize the data on that chart type, which, yeah, it's an important insight. And also this sort of like I have to add the charts to different cells and run the cells. It's not very convenient. And actually, it's a one-directional use case. So if I just rerun this cell, like for example this one, the chart will look completely different, and it might not be very obvious what it shows. Even though obviously VIZZU will do the animation and everything, but you know that's the basic foundation. That won't cut it. So to address the first issue, we introduced presets. We have 40+ chart presets. Instead of just running the config and then adding the chart configuration, you can pick, I don't know, let's say a percentage column chart like this one, which would say like config percentage column, and then you can just, so it's a lot easier to process what goes where, and you know the end result when you start the configuration. You don't just have to experiment with it. We have all these on our site, obviously all the presets, so, and if you click on any of the thumbnails, you'll get to an example. So it should be fairly easy to start using those. Let me give you a little example when I'm using the presets. So here we have some data about the revenue that different music formats generated in the US since the 70s up to 2020. As you can see, I'm using another data frame. And here I'm just going to add config bar. So it's going to be a bar chart. The syntax looks a lot different. And here I am with a bar chart that shows the total number of the total revenue for each of the data formats. As you can see, we're actually summarizing the data in the background. So we're doing this sort of pivoting because the data itself is per year, but since I didn't use year, VIZZU just sums the data per format automatically. You don't have to do anything about it. We're working on enabling it for you not only to use sum, but also like average and do this kind of basic mathematical features of it. But you know, the problem with it doesn't look very nice. So let's turn this into a grouped bar chart and add some color to it just by adding a palette with the hex code of the colors one by one, and then it looks a lot nicer. So we can see that CD was the most beneficious music format for studios, and vinyl and cassette are actually close second and third, and then comes streaming and download and all the others. So what we can do with this story to show again just other aspects of the same thing is to add the year, so to check out a yearly configuration. And first, this is not going to change the chart a lot, what I just did. What I did was just to add year on the x-axis. So it's here, but we cannot really see it. It's because of the early phase we're in, this is an interim step that I'm using. Because if I was to just animate to the second phase and add a new category like year in the like between steps, then VIZZU wouldn't be able at this point to connect the two phases, and it would just fade. But now, as I added this category that I'm going to use in the next step, it's going to do the animation really nicely, and this is going to turn into a splitted column chart. As you can see, I'm using this preset right now. And so just an additional thing about the styling of the charts, we also animate those too. So here, actually, the years on the x-axis, it's really hard to read them. But if I add the style and say that we have a sort of like a CSS type styling thing, that on the x-axis the label should be a little smaller, and it should be turned a little, and rerun this cell, then as you can see, the label turns and finds its final place. And also you can have events that, for example, in this case, we just take out all the years that are not divisible by 5, and as you can see, the chart now looks nicer. It's a simple event. You can hack VIZZU this way as well. That's what I wanted to tell you. So next up, I'm going to use a stream graph. It shows the distribution of the different formats per year, and again, we can split it up to see the trends side by side. We can zoom in just by adding the filter, so to only include vinyl and streaming very easily. It is basically the different way how we use the zooming from the first example. It's a very simple feature, but it's very powerful to first introduce just one element of the chart and add the rest while keeping the context, or just zoom in on different elements to direct the viewer's attention and to enable them to see more details. And I'm just going to add everything back. This is the point that my wife calls when the elephants kiss. Yeah, there you go. And last but not least, I'm just going to turn this into a line chart so that we can compare the trends really easily over time. So as you can see, it's just a couple of lines of code, and there you go. You have animated transitions and charts that tell a story. So we address the generic logic kind of thing, but still it's a one-directional use case. And that's why we worked hard, very hard actually, to turn the whole thing into a story that can just go and present. For this example, I'm going to use data from the R&D budget of the US federal government from 1955 to 2020. As you can see, it's yet another CSV. I set the style. It's not that important. And then, as you can see, we have a different extension. It's not just ipyvizzu that we need to install. Sorry, I didn't tell you that you have to install it by using pip. You also have Conda Forge to use, but also you have to install ipyvizzu-story at this point. And it introduces some new things like slides and stories. So as you can see, we have a story, we have a slide, and we have a step. Now, a step is basically a chart. So it's the same as it was before. A slide it can be either a single chart, a single step, or it can be multiple steps where you want the story to stop. And then a story is a story that you want to present. So what we do here is we create the story, we add the data and the style to it, we set the size, and we start building the story, just creating the first slide, filtering the data once again. Basically, the syntax is the same as it was before, adding things to the y-axis, adding things to the x-axis. Sorry, I didn't use the presets here, but I mean, you know how it works for now, at least I assume. And then we add that slide to the story just by calling the story add slide method. And we add yet another slide where we use, once again, the splitting feature, and we add that there too. And we also switch on the tooltip feature just by calling this set feature method. And we call the play method, and here we go. We have an animated data story right here. You can just switch on full screen. We have the tooltips because we switched that on. We see the initial slide, and then just by clicking next or using a clicker, you can move back and forth between the slides that you created. So there's like an animated data presentation right within your Jupyter notebook, and also Colab and Kaggle and all the others that I mentioned before. So you can basically use, again, this event that would allow only every 5th year on the x-axis to appear, and you can add more slides to it. Here's an example of a multi-step slide where we switch the splitting to false, and then we add one category that was missing, which is the defense budget. And because the story contains all the charts, we get back to the very beginning. So we saw the initial step when we split it up, and now we switch the split off, and we add the defense budget. As you can see, it takes quite a huge amount of all the money that was spent by the federal budget in the US. And we can even make it more apparent by switching the align to stretch in the next step, which would then show the whole thing in terms of like percentages instead of values. So here we go. We have the defense budget, and we can just turn the align stretch thing on, and you can see the share of the different components per year. Easy as that. You don't have to really explain to the audience what they're looking at, right? It's so obvious. And as a sort of like 2 extra steps, and I'm getting towards the end of my presentation, is to zoom in on certain aspects. So like because I think it's really like a very powerful feature of our thing. For example, if you want to show the changes between the beginning at the end, you just turn it into a column chart and then zoom in on the first and the last element. And as a last step, you can just group the elements and compare them to side by side. Let me run this last cell. And I'm just going to go to the last slide like this. As you can see, VIZZU will connect the slides, even the first and the last one, if that's possible. So I just went to the last slide with a click of a button. This was the state where we were before, and we just we just grouped the chart differently and arranged the elements differently so that you can see how from the beginning towards the very end of this period the amount spent on these things changed. Also, you have the opportunity to save the story as an interactive HTML. It has the data. You can just send it or put it on a company server, whatever. It's going to be the same. People can just play with it and look into it. And they have also the code behind it, so if someone knows what they're doing, they can just turn it back into a notebook and use it once again. So yeah, and as promised, I'm towards the end of my presentation. There are actually, before we turn to the question, there are actually 2 things that I want to do. First, if those of you who do work as data scientists would kindly give me just 2 minutes of your time and go to this URL, bit.ly/VIZZU survey, and tell us a little bit about yourself. I can promise you it's just 2 minutes and it's multiple choice. It's just we really want to understand our audience and our target customers a little better. And again, we are giving it to you for free. We really want to work with you. We want you to thrive on these presentations. Yeah, it's down the road. End users will be able to use it. Hopefully that will enable you to offload some of the tasks that are about to build simple charts for business people to understand what's going on. But for now, it's all yours. Please use it. Tell us if you need anything. Tell us if you found a bug. Tell us if you have a feature request. We're here to listen. And the second thing I wanted is, like, I always do a selfie from the stage to prove to you guys back in the office that why I took some time off and why I'm here. If you have any privacy issues, just don't look into the camera, okay? But I can promise you, you won't be recognizable. And if you can, I mean, there was just, oh yeah, thank you. Can you turn this on? Thanks. Yeah, everybody just say VIZZU, okay, on the count of 3. So 1, 2, 3, VIZZU. Yeah, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, sorry for being a little over time. Let's turn to questions, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter. Actually, you're right on time.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything is good, is perfect. We have some questions here coming
Yeah.
in from Slido. Let's take the top one. What is the business model of VIZZU? If the tool is free, how do you generate revenue?
That's a great question. I actually have some backup slides. I can even, is there a chance to show them? It really tells a story, but, or should I just explain in words?
I think if you want to go
Okay.
back to your slideshow, you can. I'm sure the guys can handle it.
Can you switch back to the slides, please, then? Visszaadjátok a prezit, létszik, kösz? Okay. So, yeah, the product strategy. Now we're providing a service for the data scientists, and we don't think we can ask for any money. Actually, we have a great advisor who told us that there's no one with a notebook budget, and everybody has a BI budget. And we want to get into the BI budget. I mean, you are the people with the most intimate relationship with data. You can help us a lot in identifying the benefits and moving this thing forward. And we know that you're used to using free tools, and we don't have any problem with that. We want to work together with you. We will just take some money from the business guys when they start reusing your thing within their Tableau and Power BI and other dashboards. So actually, we already have a proof of concept when VIZZU runs within Tableau, was built by the market leader of the Tableau extensions called Infotopics, a Dutch company. So no worries, we don't want to charge you. We want to charge the business guys, okay? And yeah, thanks. How hard is it to render a video from an ipyvizzu-story? Is it possible to save it as a GIF? Right now, I'm using some like browser extensions to do that. We don't have it out of box. It's a feature that's on the feature request list, and it just had like 11 upvotes, it seems. So we should focus our attention on it very soon. You will be able to, I mean, we created videos and animated GIFs using external software. You can do it too fairly easily, but we will add this feature to the library, and thanks for the suggestion.
So Peter, anytime you can jump around and answer the ones that you would like, and let the other ones go. But which one looks most enticing to you at the moment? Is it the top one?
There are a couple of interesting questions here, but since I think the Plotly and the Prezi one had the most upvotes, I would want to continue with those because it seems like the audience, that's what the audience is interested in. So.
Great idea.
Okay.
Great. So do you plan to integrate with Prezi?
Yes, we don't. We want to integrate. So obviously, from the output side, it makes a lot of sense to integrate with presentation tools in general. From what we learned, obviously, it's still PowerPoint that's used in most of the cases. Actually, we had a different survey on LinkedIn where it turned out that over 40% of data scientists who have to present what they found in a Jupyter notebook screenshot the plots and add it to a PPT, which is fine. I mean, that's the current use case. We obviously want to make something sleeker and nicer for them. Prezi would be, in some sense, a natural fit because of there's focus on storytelling and animated transitions. We have to work out the technical details. We are actually in good relationship with the team, obviously working mostly here, also in Budapest. So we'd love to be integrated, but I think some contribution from their side would be necessary as well, and we're happy to have that discussion, obviously. What are our, sorry,
no,
you're with the question.
Hopefully someday soon there will be that announcement, the collaboration, hopefully.
Absolutely.
What are the advantages over Plotly?
So Plotly is a great tool used by millions of people. They also have the interactive tooltip thing and some sort of animation capabilities, but I don't think they are so much focused on storytelling, and I don't think that they have all these chart types that we do. They have, and they actually took a very different path by building their own BI tool, which is very expensive. and creates their sort of own walled garden. So actually, we want to learn from their experience and not go that way. That's what I can say. But they definitely have a lot of, so that's a more mature tool than ours, built on a different philosophy, built with data scientists in mind from the startup. So I would never say that ours is better. It's just we're different, and we focus on different use cases than they do, especially for now. And I don't think that Plotly is so much focused on the very end user, so the Google spreadsheet and Excel users, whereas that's where we would want to go to next. I mean, after the BI tool, I guess.
Awesome. How about the next one? Can you create live charts with streaming data with VIZZU?
Absolutely. With the JavaScript library, you can embed it into any tool, and you can just, actually, because we animate from every state to the next one, if you refresh the data behind the chart that is being shown, the VIZZU chart that is being shown, it's going to animate out of box. It's going to make space for the new data on a timeline, for example, to appear, and then it fades in. So it comes naturally with this generic approach that we use. With the story, it's a little different. Now you still have to add the whole data set to the story, but it's because it's for a specific use case. But with ipyvizzu, you can just add new elements to your data frame, and VIZZU will do the rest.
I'm really excited for this next one. Do you see VIZZU at some point as a no-code tool?
Thank you very much for the question. Really, can I get the slides back again just for a second? Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm not expecting some of the questions, but I also expect my videos to run. Okay, so this is, I mean, I showed you something that caught my attention and that dragged me in about what Andrew showed me. Now, what we have for a vision is, so we feel that these are, so exploring data, telling stories, putting things on a report and dashboard to check regularly, and do forecasting and planning. These pretty much cover a lot of use cases for end users, so people working with data. And we know that the way we work, or our goal is to basically build, so enable our single engine to serve all these needs and to help people have a common language, so like better interact with data. Don't make visualization an afterthought, but a central element of a graphical user interface. So that's the vision we're working towards, to make it a no-code tool.
Excellent, excellent. What's the learning curve?
It's super easy. No, I mean, obviously, if you have the motivation. So, you know, I'm not in a very good position to say that. I'm obviously absolutely biased. I've been using earlier versions of this tool when it even had a very obscure scripting language and things like that. And for example, for the Trump thing, I had to. It contained, I think, over 600,000 lines of code or something. So it was very different from what we have now. No, it was a prototype. So as you could see, you can set up charts fairly easily, just with a couple of lines of Python. It also, with the Jupyter and the other notebooks, it encourages like experimentation. You change one thing, you rerun the cell, and you take a look at the result. Also with the story, it's fairly easy to add an additional slide, try a different setting, click to go to the last slide, and see what you made. So we have a step-by-step tutorial, by the way, on the site. That introduces the logic and all the different characteristics and parameters that are available. We have a Slack channel. I personally welcome everyone who joins still, and we are all very happy to help. There are a couple of things, like the approach that we took, it might not come natural for everyone, but after you get the sense, it becomes much easier, and we're just here to help, really.
Awesome. Peter, we have time for one more question. Would you like to choose the question?
Yes. Maybe I'm going to cheat a little bit. Maximum amount of data, a couple of tens of thousands of data points without any issues, and it's going to be better. Geographical maps, yes. And the stories into PowerPoint, yes, absolutely. That would be a natural export for our thing, and we're going to work on that. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you for a lovely presentation. Let's give him a round of applause, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.